Hello everyone, 76 Patriot here, and today I'm going to be going over my gubernatorial predictions for this year's upcoming election. There's not actually a ton to go over here, but there is one very important race I think we need to focus on for sure. So without further ado, let's start by filling out the safe Democrat state, of which there is only one. That would be the state of Delaware, where I honestly don't know who's running it, but I think the lieutenant governor, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it doesn't really matter. It's going to be safe Democrat at the end of the day. So, with that out of the way, moving on to the safe Republican states, we'll start off with the state of Utah, which honestly is, in my view, one of the saddest stories of any governor's race happening this year. Spencer Cox, the incumbent, probably going to cruise to re-election. One of the worst governors, certainly worst Republican governors in the entire country, in my opinion. Sadly, the state convention did vote for somebody else, but as happens all too frequently in Utah, whoever the state convention votes for is not who the electorate at large votes for. So that's too bad, but whatever, can't help it. North Dakota, honestly don't know who's running. Possibly, I think the lieutenant governor, they don't have their primary for like months and months. It's an extremely late one. But that'll be safe Republican, whoever wins it at the end of the day. Montana, really psyched about this one. Greg Gianforte is running for re-election, and he is, in my opinion, one of the best governors, if not the best governor in the entire nation right now. He is incredibly underrated and pushes a great conservative agenda and really has gotten a lot of things done in the state of Montana, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for it. So I am happy to see him cruise to a safe margin in Montana. Moving on to Missouri, Mike Parsons, the incumbent running for re-election. He's a pretty good governor, in my opinion, so he'll win no problem. Missouri is not the swing state that it once was, thank God. Indiana, another W here. Well, we're taking another win because Mike Braun is leaving the Senate to become the governor. He won his primary already handily, and he will win by a safe margin again. This is great because Eric Holcomb, the incumbent, easily one of the worst Republican governors in total rhino and fraud, honestly. So socially liberal, and I'm so happy that he's done. Term limited. Mike Braun will be an instant upgrade. West Virginia, of course, Patrick Morrisey won his primary. The Attorney General won his primary not too long ago, and he'll win by a safe margin, by a blowout. Who knows? 30, 40 points. And he's a good candidate for West Virginia, in my opinion. There has been some talk about could Joe Manchin possibly, due to recently deregistering or switching from a Democrat to independent, could he possibly run in the governor's race and act as a spoiler candidate or run as an independent. He's personally, I believe, if I recall correctly, he's ruled it out and said that's kind of nonsense. So Morrissey will be the governor at the end of the day. Even if Manchin was running, he would win. Vermont, the weird outlier. I mean, it's crazy in these days to see a safe red Vermont, but that's the Northeast. They love themselves some rhino liberal Republican governors. Phil Scott, awful rhino, probably the worst Republican. Actually, he is the worst, in my opinion, worst Republican governor in the country. He'll win by a safe margin. The amount of ticket splitting Vermont does between federal and state races is mind-blowing, honestly, sometimes. But whatever. Now I believe we're getting down into the more toss-up type states. Not really toss-up, but races I believe will be won by slimmer margins. Actually, on second thought, Washington, I'm so torn between putting it as likely and safe. You know what? I'm going to have to renege on myself. I'm going to have to make it safe. Sorry, guys, I lied. There was 2 Democrat safe states. So Washington State, this is a curious case because I was actually going to put it as likely. I'm not sure. The partisan lean is just so Democratic, but basically, if we go into, well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. There was a poll showed Ferguson, the incumbent AG, up by 2. Again, that's just one poll. So, but I just thought I'd share that. The main reasoning to think that Washington could be competitive is because Bob Ferguson is running against Dave Reichert, who, hopefully that's how you say his name, Reichert, I don't know. He was the sheriff of King County, granted quite a while ago, and he was a moderate Republican House member. So because he's more moderate, people think he has a chance of winning. Or maybe not winning, but outright, making it darn close. And there is some precedent for that, because if you look back at, say, let's go all the way back in the time machine, back to, 2016. Inslee won by 8, the governor at that time. Go back even further, that's a slow margin. He won by 3. So he won by 3, then he won by 8. Then on to fast forward to 2020, he won by 13. So increasing margins. But now let's look at the presidential map. So Inslee won by 3 while Obama was winning by 14. He won by 8 when Clinton won by 15. And he won by, this is the most crazy one, he won by 13 and Biden won by 19. So as you can see, Washington does a fair bit of ticket splitting routinely, and has consistently the past several cycles, between the federal presidential race and the gubernatorial race, and other statewide offices as well. I mean, until relatively recently, Washington still had elected a statewide Republican of some office, I forget what. So that was the only reason why I would possibly put it as likely. However, it's just, considering it's probably going to vote for Biden by, over 15 points, I just don't know if that's going to take it down to likely territory. So that's enough about Washington. I ranted way too much there. But on to New Hampshire. So let's do the lean Republican state. We'll see if this changes in my upcoming predictions, over the next couple months. If this might bounce to likely, I'm not sure. But it's lean at this point, in my opinion, because if we look at polling, this is pretty old. This is from last year. It showed Ayotte up by 3 and 9. I don't know. Sounds reasonable. The +3 particularly. So let me go back, actually. Just quick recap. So Kelly Ayotte, the former one-term senator, is running against I don't know who, because they haven't had their primary yet. So that's going to be interesting. Doesn't matter, because the Democratic competition is just not... they're all these, very local... They come from, local, state... Not state, gosh. Sorry, I'm tongue-twisted here. They come from local, races, or they're local officials, basically. So, whereas Ayotte has a heck of a ton of name recognition in New Hampshire. Even though she lost her last Senate race, it was barely by the skin of her teeth. It was less than 1,000 votes. So that's why I think, particularly with, some would argue Trump on the ballot doesn't matter in New Hampshire, because they do so much ticket splitting as it is. I don't know, because I think Trump is going to do a few points better in the state than he did in 2020. So if we go back here again to the governors, look at the amount of ticket splitting they do. State voted for Biden by 7. Sununu by 31. 31. That is insane. So the reason I put New Hampshire as lean is because, number one, Ayotte is running a relatively moderate campaign. Number two, the Democratic bench is not particularly strong, at least for the governor's race. So I think it's going red by a lean margin. I could see 3 to 4, maybe. It might get higher, honestly. So I might have to move that to likely eventually. Now, North Carolina, the one you and we've all been waiting for. This is the single most competitive governor's race this cycle. This is a big one. So we're just going to take a couple minutes here and delve into what could make either candidate win. So let's first say who the candidates are. Most people probably know Mark Robinson, current lieutenant governor, great guy. Absolutely love the guy. Some would say controversial. I would just say he speaks the truth, and just calls things like it is, particularly when it comes to social issues, when it comes to other just state issues. So I love Mark Robinson, and he's quite the popular figure, not just in North Carolina, but in American politics at large. So he's running against Josh Stein, the attorney general, who's kind of grifted his way into painting himself, oh, I'm a moderate Democrat. Um, I hope I don't, and I don't think, and I hope that the voters don't buy into that and see him for the quite liberal that he is, honestly. So he's basically Cooper's protege. So now if we go into polling, polling has shown this race neck and neck. And this is driving me crazy looking at it. It's so close. They have Stein barely up. Barely up. About a week or two ago, he was, probably last week, it was even, perfectly even. But that's going to bounce back and forth with every poll. We've seen a tie. We've seen Robinson leading. We've seen Stein leading. So I really don't know how this race is going to go. However, I think there are a couple of indicators that could prove useful in determining not only my prediction, but also might inform you guys' predictions and thoughts as well. So firstly, let's do a little history. And I hate Wikipedia. They are like the least credible source ever. I'm simply just using them for the margins because I really like the little setup and breakdown that they have here. I don't know why. I've always loved this. Just how they show the margins in the maps right here. So if we go back to, let's say, 2012. Actually, let's say 20. Let's go back a long ways. 2008, that's fine. So we see how basically what's delivered Democrats repeated victories, let's go back one more, is massive. You can see all around, even these rural counties, but look at this massive turnout right here in the eastern part of the state. In that typical or traditional kind of black belt, rural yet heavily Democratic. Look, consistently delivering. Because there are numerous counties here. Look at 2016. There are numerous counties here that, let me try to find, I can't find, I'm trying to overlay a map of the presidential race onto this. I can't really. But basically, there are numerous counties here that Trump won in 2016 and 2020 that Cooper picked off. Really all over the state, but particularly in this eastern part right here. Yeah, look at that. Came in strong for him. And partly, I had a teacher, so I am a political science student, and I had a teacher that basically said that's because all the past North Carolina Democratic candidates for governor have been from this eastern part of the state. And that has allowed them to get out those ancestral Dems and show out like nothing else and support their local boy, for lack of a better term. Now, this election cycle, that may change. Not only is this area right here rapidly moving to the right, we saw that in the midterms. We've seen that even in 2020 in some instances. This is moving rapidly to the right. Minorities are moving away from the Democratic base. Not only that, Stein does not have that appeal, in my opinion. He is just a typical kind of Democrat from Raleigh. That's the image that he's being painted at least to a lot of people and friends that I know. So he does not have those kind of rural, Democratic, traditional, Southern roots in this part of the state that he needs geographically to get him over that line. So that right there, in my opinion, is kind of a factor against Stein. So another thing is polling in the last two cycles. Now, sure, this is Cooper, so you could argue it's a different guy, because it is, different candidate. I'm not so sure. I think some of it could be over polling too much in the Democrat candidate's favor. Because if we look, Cooper plus 2 and change. He won by 2 points less. So, overestimating, that's the word, overestimating his performance. Now we look in 2020. Sure, he won, but massive. Look at that overestimation of Cooper. 11. They had him up by 11. Look at that poll. 19, 12. That's ridiculous. He won by 4. So 2 times, and I'm sure many more times too, I've just looked over these past 2 times. Massive overestimation of the Democratic candidate. So back to here. If Stein is only up 0.2 as of right now, things could change, but as of right now, basically a tied race. Stein up barely. What I'm thinking is that based on, these precedents, that could basically what I'm trying to say is that would, oh gosh, what did I do? I really messed something up. Okay. So basically that would make Robinson win. I mean, if you look at that, if he's only up 0.2, factor in that extra overestimation, Robinson wins. Not only that, here is the big banger, and hopefully you guys aren't bored this time, but I'm just having so much fun going over this. So, this is the gubernatorial race. Cooper won by 4, but look, Trump won by 1 and change. That is nothing. So he only outperformed Trump 3 points. If Trump's taking the state by 3 to 4, possibly more, I mean, a lot more if you look at the polls, I think he'd win by 3 to 4. Similar to his 2016 margin, about 3.5. That is barely enough to put Robinson over the edge. I mean, if you factor in, that's darn close. But I think with Trump at the top of the ticket, it can be done. So that is basically it. So I'm going to give North Carolina tilt Republican. Really, it's anyone's game at the end of the day. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of time before Election Day. But right now, I'm predicting Robinson to narrowly pull it out. It could literally come down to 1,000 votes. Could come down to a couple hundred. I don't know, but it's going to be a crazy election season, guys. So that's my prediction. Sorry for being a bit long-winded there, but hopefully you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.